Good morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. My name is Nick Marro with Occupied Fantasy. As always, I'm here to help you break down tonight's NBA DFS main slates on both DraftKings and FanDuel. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. That helps us get more free content like this out to you on a regular basis. Also, check the links in the description below. If you're not already a member of Occupy Fantasy, as a member, you get access to the model you see here, which I'll be using throughout the video. Also, a single lineup builder, multi lineup builder. We also have a private Discord server full of DFS pros to help you improve your game. But yeah, nice little 5 game slate tonight, not locking until 8 Eastern Standard Time. Forgive me, I'm still getting over a cold, but we should be able to get through this one pretty quickly. The good news is we do have that extra hour to prepare. The bad news is there are a lot of teams on back to back, so I'm going to have to speculate a bit as we go through. We don't have all the injury reports that we would if none of these teams were on back to backs. But also, I'm going to have a DraftKings and FanDuel window open as I always do and slowly start to build as we talk through the slate. A ton of studs to pay up for on the slate, so hopefully we get more value to open up throughout the day. But yeah, let's get into it here. There is an early game. The Pacers at the Hawks are playing at 5 p.m. That's not on the main slate, so we can go ahead and ignore that one. All right, so first game on the slate, we're looking at the 8 o'clock window. We have the Heat hosting the Nets in Miami. 222-point game total here. Um, Heat are 6 point favorites. Starting with the Nets. So Seth Curry's out. Ben Simmons is out. Sounds like Ben might be done for the year. Hopefully his last game's in a Nets uniform. Wish the kid well, but that was a failed experiment. Anyway, so yeah, the Nets have been pretty inconsistent lately. They kind of play to the level of their opponent. They show up some nights, other nights they don't. The one thing that's been kind of a constant is Nick Claxton has been pretty good as a center play. The issue is on this slate, there's a ton of great centers, so I don't know that I'm going to get there. Mikal Bridges has seen his usage go up since the trade for Kevin Durant. No real surprise there. He's drawing decent ownership on both sites. He's been a little bit inconsistent lately. His price is down. You get him at 7,100 over on DK, 7,800 over on FanDuel. But yeah, I don't mind him on either side. He's fine. Not really a core piece for me as things stand, but certainly someone I can see getting to. Same with Spencer Dinwiddie. He's over 8K on both sites now, but with Seth Curry out, I think he's going to have to do even more ball handling than he usually does. So no issues getting to Spence. Cameron Johnson looks fine here, 6,300 on both sites. Dorian Finney-Smith's been getting the starts, seeing plenty of minutes, but he hasn't been very productive. I actually prefer Royce O'Neal coming off the bench as a last man in if you're picking between the two of them. And then Day'Ron Sharpe's been surprisingly effective. I mean, as far as real basketball goes, this guy is not a great center, but for fantasy purposes, at 3,500 on DK, I think there are crazier punt plays to use tonight, so I don't mind him there. But really, it's a tough matchup with Miami, one of the lower totals on the board. So I wouldn't mind just kind of skipping over the Nets here, but I could certainly see it getting to any of the starters. I didn't mention Cam Johnson. He's going to look okay here as well. Very scoring dependent. But yeah, decent upside. Not a play that we necessarily want to prioritize, though. Over on the Miami side of things, Kyle Lowry's questionable. Caleb Martin's questionable. No Cody Zeller or Orlando Robinson. So really no significant injury news here we're dealing with. Kyle Lowry is almost a non-factor at this point for this team. Gabe Vincent's been getting the starts regardless. Um, excuse me. Jimmy Butler looks okay on FanDuel. Probably wouldn't get to him at 9,800, but over on DK where he's only 8,700, that's a price that I don't mind. And yeah, same with Bam Adebayo. 7,500 feels a little bit too cheap over on DK. The Nets, while Claxton has been pretty good defensively as a team, they don't do great against centers, so wouldn't mind getting to some Bam. Tyler Hero's fine as a wing option. Very inconsistent though. Pretty high ceiling, but scoring dependent. 6,700 on DK. He's a reasonable play, but not something I'd ever be rushing to get to. Kevin Love drawing a lot of ownership because we're lacking value right now. Pretty inconsistent. The minutes haven't always been what you look for in a fantasy play. I'll pull them up quickly here. Only looking at the game logs for minutes. You really don't want to be building lineups based on game logs, but yeah, only playing 23 a night. So while he is an okay value play, probably gets you close to 20 fantasy points. I don't know that that's something I want to be playing, pushing 25 to 30% ownership. In cash games, if you're desperate for value, he's fine. Gabe Vincent getting the starter point guard, regardless of whether Kyle Lowry's in or not, probably won't get to him. And then Max Strus. another decent value play. Pretty high ceiling, but a very low floor. So yeah, as far as Miami goes, there's nothing here I love. And since so many of these other teams are on back-to-backs and we might not have that injury news, I could actually see skipping this game altogether as kind of a strategy point. That way you're able to pivot as we get the news and the lineups that come out in the 9 and 10 o'clock Eastern windows. But if you are playing Miami, I don't mind Butler on DK. I don't mind Bam on either site. It stinks that FanDuel got rid of his power forward eligibility. He's a little bit more expensive over there. Um, but yeah, if you're kind of going for that balanced build, he's a solid play. Probably my favorite Miami Heat player here is Bam Adebayo. And then if we're desperate for value, maybe get some love or Strus. But as things stand, I don't think we need to go there. All right, moving into the 9 o'clock window now, we have an awesome game, but two teams on back-to-backs. We get the Bucks and the Nuggets. Nuggets are 3-point favorites at home. So this is a little bit tricky. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to these two teams, see if we got any injury tags over on DK. They tend to carry them over from the day before better than FanDuel does. Um, yeah, so I think Middleton was just resting yesterday for the Bucks because it was the front end of a back-to-back. I don't think we have to look too deeply into that. I expect he's back this evening. Jay Crowder, similar situation. He left injured from the Jazz game though, so maybe it's not. Maybe he's out tonight, but even if he's out, I don't think that's major news that we need to really keep an eye on. So I'm expecting a healthy Bucks team here, and then over on the Denver side, same thing. They should be entirely healthy. So let's start with the Bucks. Giannis, obviously, if you can afford him, 11-6 on DK, 11-7 on FanDuel. Very, very strong option. Again, the Nuggets are 3-point favorites at home, 237-point game total here. Nuggets much better at home this season, but that is one of the higher totals on the slate. So anywhere you can afford Giannis, I do like him. And then same with Drew Holiday. It's funny how these two teams are kind of mirror of each other for fantasy. You got the pay up, obviously, in Giannis and Jokic, and then the point guard looks pretty good. Just a little bit underpriced in Drew Holiday and Jamal Murray, respectively. But for me, really, really like Giannis here with Middleton back in. I don't mind getting to some Drew. Probably wouldn't rush to get to him, though. Brook Lopez had an awesome game last night. I think he had 7 blocks, 7K flat on DK, 7,600 on FanDuel. Not a great matchup with him against Joker, though. Jokic actually can go out to the perimeter, unlike a lot of the centers in the league. Regardless, he's a decent play in a high total game. Obviously, he got that block upside, which is really valuable over on FanDuel. Other than that, not looking to any of these secondary plays. If Chris Middleton was out, maybe you could get to Pat Connaughton or Grayson Allen, something like that. But on a slate where I do imagine we see some value opening up, there's really no priorities for me on Milwaukee other than Giannis and maybe Drew. Wouldn't even call Drew a priority. And the thing about Giannis and calling him a priority is there are a ton of quality pay up options on this slate, so I don't know that he really classifies as that either. But over on the Denver side of things, again, another healthy team. Love Jokic on top if you can afford him. Jamal Murray, a little bit too cheap, similar to Drew Holiday. And then, yeah, the wings look okay here as well. Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, don't mind getting to some of them. Christian Braun has been in the rotation if you're desperate for value, but obviously he's very, very difficult to rely on. Very inconsistent minutes. Mike Malone hates playing young players. But yeah, I still really like Jokic here. Don't mind Murray. Porter, Gordon look fine. Caldwell Pope does have upside if you're kind of looking for that last piece in. Bruce Brown's been a bit more productive lately, even coming off the bench. So as far as secondary plays go, I do prefer Denver over Milwaukee, but really it's tough for me to call either side priorities. Love some Jokic if you can get to him. Really like Jamal Murray. And then Aaron Gordon and Porter look good here as well. But two healthy teams. Maybe we do get some injury news throughout the day that changes things here. But as things stand, I'd be a bit surprised if anyone significant was ruled out. All right, moving into the 10 o'clock window now, we have another back to back scenario. The 76ers are at the Suns. Sixers 1.5 point underdogs on the road in Phoenix. They did have to travel to Phoenix from Golden State. So that's obviously not ideal. James Harden was out last night. I think he's actually hurt. He did go through shoot around. Maybe he's back here on this back to back, but that's something to keep an eye on. If Harden's in, he's going to be an okay play. We'll still like Embiid as another pay up option. We already have Giannis and Jokic. It's like we have so many good pay ups on this slate. But if Harden's out, then we could go back to Maxey, we can go back to Harris, we can go back to Melton. As far as secondary mid-range plays go, all three of these guys would look excellent to me. I'd like them more than I do the Denver and Milwaukee plays in that range. So keep an eye on this piece of news. Again, if Harden's in, Harden and Embiid look fine. If Harden's out, Embiid, Maxey, Harris, and Melton are all going to look excellent. So just another situation we have to keep an eye on. All right, over on the Phoenix side of things, still no KD. There was some news that he could be back as soon as I think Wednesday next week. Don't quote me on that yet. I'm pulling up a Google window to see. Yeah, progress towards returning Wednesday, so he won't be back tonight. No surprise there. DeAndre Ayton's been hurt and out as well. As long as he's out, you can maybe look to Biyombo as the starting center for a piece of value, but there are a ton of good centers on the slate. I don't know that I want to use that spot up. Um, Obviously some significant opportunity cost there if that's the direction you decide to go. Chris Paul, a little bit too cheap on both sides. Decent matchup here against Philadelphia. He's been consistently floating around 40 fantasy points. I know I haven't really penciled anything in yet on either side because there just isn't much value. And the payups are so quality that we're going to have to pick and choose. But for now, I will go ahead and add Paul on both sites. I do like the increased usage he's seeing with both Aiton and KD out of the lineup. Booker looks good as a pay up if you can afford him, but against Philadelphia, I don't know that that's the spot I'm rushing to get to. Okogie's decent as a secondary kind of value play. With KD out, he is going to see increased usage on that wing. So I'm fine getting to him 5,300 on DK, 5,100 on FanDuel. Didn't follow up. I was going to play some last night, but then we got some value to open up, so I didn't end up getting to him. Only played 20 minutes though. So maybe he gets a bit more run here on the back to back, but that's tough to trust. So even at a decent price, I don't know that I get to Okogie. Torrey Craig's been starting, just hasn't been shooting much at all, so he's really tough to get to. So really, the only plays I like here for Phoenix are Paul and Booker, maybe Biyombo if you want to go value at center. For me, I'd rather pay up. Okogie, Craig, okay as secondary plays, but their minutes have been inconsistent. Craig just hasn't been shooting the ball, so it's just tough for me to want to get to either of them as secondary plays. All right, we can move into the next game at 10 o'clock now, which unfortunately features another two teams on back to backs. We get the Jazz at the Kings. Kings are 7.5 point favorites at home. 237 point game total here, so another healthy total. And this is another tricky situation. We saw Lauri Markkanen rest yesterday, and I'm wondering if that's because of a back-to-back or because his hand is actually significantly injured. He sustained that injury on Wednesday against the Blazers. If Lauri's in, he's going to look okay here. If he's out and Jordan Clarkson's out, then we could go back to some of these kind of mid-range value pieces that we had for Utah yesterday. That being Talen Horton-Tucker on both sides, certainly much more appealing on FanDuel. I'm going to go ahead and assume that we get Clarkson or Markkanen out tonight. I don't think Sexton's going to be back. Non-partake in Friday's game. Clarkson has an appearing. Okay, so I don't think Clarkson's going to be back tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and put Talen Horton-Tucker in over on FanDuel where he's only 6K flat. I think that's a decent price for him. Um, Over on ZK, I mean, I don't mind getting to Horton-Tucker, but 6,900, it's not really jumping off the page as any sort of value. I do like Kelly Olynyk. He was excellent last night. Utah did get blown out by Milwaukee. Um, but he was super productive. But that's only if Lauri's out here. So if Lauri Markkanen's in, I probably won't get to Olynyk. But if he's out, I do consider Olynyk kind of a core play. Don't mind Chris Dunn coming off the bench. A little bit expensive given his inconsistent minutes, but he has shown he has decent fantasy upside. And then secondary value like Agbaji and Fontecchio are both decent here. They're both priced up though, a little bit too expensive for my taste unless we get Markkanen and Clarkson out for sure. But as things stand, no real priorities here for me except for Horton-Tucker over on FanDuel. And I do like Walker Kessler, but there's just too many quality centers tonight. I don't know that I can get to him. But again, if Lauri's in, he's fine. Not really a priority. I'm hoping he's out so we could go to Horton-Tucker and Olynyk comfortably. Horton-Tucker's fine as long as Clarkson and Sexton are out, though, and I don't think they play here. So he's probably safe regardless. All right, we got one more game, I believe. And two teams that are not on back to back. So we actually have the injury news here, which is good to see. Paul George is out for the Clippers, as is Norman Powell and Brandon Boston. The rest of these injuries are on G Leaguers, so we don't have to worry about too much there. Um, but yeah, with Paul George out, obviously we're seeing increased usage for Kawhi Leonard. Russell Westbrook's going to look better. He's been starting seeing plenty of minutes. I take that back. Not plenty of minutes, but I think with George out, he's going to have to. Um, Hadn't been getting to 30 consistently. Only played 29 last time out, but he is pushing value at a reasonable price. So don't mind Russ on either side. Tough for me to trust Zubac with Mason Plumlee now in the picture. Eric Gordon, going to see increased usage, but he's very tough to trust now that he's priced above 5K. Don't mind getting to some Marcus Morris. He should be fine here, but really, I mean, another player who's just really tough to trust. So I like Kawhi and Russ here. Don't love much of the value though, which is unfortunate because it seems like we don't have a ton of value on the slate. Actually, let me backtrack now. Going back to the Kings here. Did I miss this game entirely? I just didn't talk about the Kings. That's my bad. So the Kings are facing the Jazz also on a back-to-back, and it's funny I skipped over them because they're the only team with significant injury news. So rewinds. My apologies. Forget we were talking about the Clippers. We're back on this Kings Jazz game. So we already like some of these Jazz pieces. De'Aaron Fox left the game injured last night, and it did look significant, which means we're going to have Davion Mitchell chalk night once again. And Davion Mitchell's been pretty terrible as a starter this season when given the opportunity. He's been a little bit better lately, even with Fox in the lineup. So I do have some interest in him. Here is value, and I mean, really, I don't love him as a play. Like, he's just not a great fantasy producer. But we just do not have any value on this slate. So where he's only 3,300 on DK, I think you almost just have to click him. Hold your breath. Just hope it goes well enough. In large field tournaments at high ownership, there's certainly merit to getting away from him. Over on FanDuel at 4,500, I think he's an even easier fade because he's quite above mid price. But again, we're really lacking value this slate, so I don't mind getting to Davion Mitchell here, even though I think he's pretty terrible as far as fantasy basketball is concerned. Other players that are going to benefit, though, we got Malik Monk, Kevin Herter. Herter just came back from an injury. I wouldn't be shocked to see him rest on the second half of back to back. If he's in, though, he's going to be shooting a lot. But Malik Monk on both sides, I think, is fine. He's going to have to see a lot of usage here with Fox out of the lineup. I'll go ahead and add him. Not dirt cheap or anything, but certainly a player I trust a lot more than I do. Davion Mitchell, he's been pretty consistently up and down as far as scoring goes, but he just hasn't been playing the minutes. I think he's going to have to get that run here. If Fox is indeed out, and I do imagine he will be, that injury looked pretty bad. Um, but yeah, Kevin Herter is fine. Harrison Barnes is going to see increased usage, so at 5K flat, I think you get to some Barnes. It's funny I skipped over the one team that actually has decent value. Um, but yeah, I'll go ahead and add Barnes as well. And then Sabonis, obviously going to see a nice bump in his usage. Keegan Murray, another player I like here. So really, you got to kind of pick and choose. So as far as like trusting these guys, I trust Barnes as much, if not more, than Monk, and I trust both of them a lot more than I trust Mitchell. If Herter's in, I trust him more than Mitchell, but not as much as Barnes and Monk. And then Keegan Murray has just been lights out from three. I don't mind him at all here either. So you could play 3 or 4 Kings in your lineups, kind of assuming that we don't get more value or injury news throughout the day. If Harden's out, we could look to some of those 76ers mid-range plays. But the issue with them is they are priced up. So I got Monk, Barnes, and Murray for now over on FanDuel. We got Mitchell, Barnes, Murray, and Monk over on DK. And then I really like Sabonis, but you got to compare him to plays like Kawhi, Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid. You're gonna have to pick your favorite payups tonight, and it's really tough to go wrong with any of them. Um, but yeah, for now I'll pencil them all in. But like I said, I think in cash games and smaller field stuff, you play Davion Mitchell, but it's probably a wise fade to get away from that very heavy ownership. He's been in this situation plenty of times this season with Fox out, and he just hasn't looked good. Secondary options like Trey Lyles are fine. I already talked about Kevin Herter. Kessler Edwards is probably going to start. Such low usage, though, that I probably wouldn't get to him even with Fox out of the lineup. So just to rank these guys once again, obviously Sabonis is probably the best play here if you can afford him, followed by Barnes and Murray and Monk and then Herter, and then Mitchell kind of taking up the rear. But the thing, pause. The thing about Mitchell though is he's terrible as far as fantasy goes, so I probably won't get to him much. Um, but yeah, gonna have to get some Kings value. I know it doesn't feel great, but against Utah in a game with a high total, you should be fine there. All right, so back to that Clippers game. So, yeah, no Paul George. So we like Kawhi Leonard. We like Russ Westbrook. Everything else doesn't look great. They're all kind of priced up. I don't mind getting to some Marcus Morris, but I'd probably rather play those Kings wings as things stand. We did see more minutes for Bones Highland last time out. I don't know that we can rely on that though. He does certainly have upside, as we obviously saw when he was still in Denver. 36 fantasy points last time out, but at 5,800 coming off the bench, I don't know that we can trust those minutes. 4,600 on DK, I do like a little bit better. So Bones Highland certainly deserves a shout here as well. Getting more run than Terrence Mann, which is a little bit surprising. But both of those guys have clear upside running that second unit with massive bumps in usage. Opposite the Clippers here, we do have the New Orleans Pelicans. Still no Zion, no surprise there. Trey Murphy's also questionable, and no Jose Alvarado. So wherever you can get to Brandon Ingram, I like him. I think he's a really strong play here. I prefer him over CJ McCollum at similar ownership. It's honestly easier to fill the guard positions than it is the wing, so I don't mind getting to Ingram. Jovel's been seeing more minutes, which is good to see. I think that's because Larry Nance is banged up. It's really tough to say though, but he does have plenty of upside at 7,500 on DK, AK flat over on FanDuel. And then if we do get Trey Murphy out, excuse me, I'm gonna like Herbert Jones a lot here, followed by Najee Marshall as kind of a secondary value piece. Um, but yeah, we're seeing a lot of ownership going to Jones on FanDuel, which isn't surprising. He's power forward only on DK, which doesn't make much sense to me. You get shooting guard, small forward over on FanDuel. So again, if Trey Murphy's out, I will get to some Herbert Jones. Um, Richardson hasn't been great, but he's okay as kind of a last piece in. But really, the one play I like for the Pelicans here is Brandon Ingram. All right, so we kind of built the shell of a roster on each site, mostly using that Kings value. I also got THT over on FanDuel and Chris Paul. So you're going to have to pick your favorite payups here. So I'll say this. If Harden's out, maybe Embiid is where I go against Phoenix. Obviously, historically, they're a tough team defensively, but with no DeAndre Ayton, I think Embiid eats on Biyombo and Landell over there. Wouldn't mind going to Jokic or Giannis either. It's really kind of just take your pick of the three, and I'd have trouble arguing with anyone on any of these guys. So for me, for now, it's Embiid under the assumption that Harden's out. But if Harden's in, I think you go to Joker or Embiid over him. And if you want to go more balanced, you don't want to play all this Kings value, you could go to Sabonis or Leonard. With Fox or George out respectively and kind of build that way. If we get more value, maybe you could fit two of these guys, 4,600 each if you put in Sabonis and Leonard as things stand. But if I go to like Embiid and Leonard, you're left with 3,800. So you're really kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. But all those payups are going to look really solid here. Looking at point per dollar over on ZK, what we have remaining 8,200. So let's say I put an Embiid. Can we also get Leonard or Sabonis? Yeah, technically speaking, you're gonna have to find a player that's 3K flat that you like. I don't know that I can do it, but it is possible to fit two studs over on DK. Like I said, if Harden's out, I'd probably favor Embiid, followed by Giannis and then Joker. Actually, I'll go Joker over Giannis just because Middleton's back tonight. So if I'm ranking studs, if Harden's out, Embiid's number one, followed by Joker, followed by Giannis. Then Sabonis and Leonard are pretty close, followed by Booker there. But yeah, a really good slate as far as payup goes. We're still lacking value. You see all the ownership right now going to these Kings pieces. Um, Kevin Love, fine as a last piece and not someone I'm rushing to get to, but over on FanDuel where you can play him at power forward. You play him at power forward on DK as well, but he might allow you to get two spend ups, so don't mind a play like that. But again, this is a late slate locking at 8 p.m. tonight. It is the main slate on both sites. Where you're going to have to keep an eye on news, though. All the more reason to sign up to Occupy Fantasy. You get access to the model, which updates in real time as that injury news breaks. Also in the Discord server, I'm sure we'll have folks in there discussing um, these injuries as they break throughout the day. As always, my name's Nick Marro. Follow me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, help us get more free content like this out to you. Let's have some fun tonight, everyone, and make some money. Keep an eye on that news. Take care and good.